we have Kyle Coon on today with us. Kyle, super excited to chat with you and very excited to meet you. Why don't you give us a sort of brief introduction to yourself?
Yeah, Jordan, thanks for having me on. Super happy to be here. It's an honor and a pleasure. So, yeah, I mean, just the 30,000 foot view of me is that I lost my sight when I was 6 years old due to cancer, and you know you can probably imagine as a 6 7 year old kid, I wasn't too jazzed about that. So I went into, I guess you could call it a little bit of a depression, just wasn't really sure how I was going to live life. And I was very fortunate that I was put in contact and put in touch with an older gentleman who was in his early 30s at the time. So, but he was a totally blind adventure athlete, and he kind of gave me a verbal slap upside the head and said, "Hey, just because you're blind doesn't mean you can't have a great life. So I want you to go try rock climbing." And so I decided to take him at his word and went and just pursued every level of adventure sport that I could, and eventually, climbed my way up through, getting into rock climbing, skiing, cycling, all kinds of just different adventure sports, until I found my way into the sport of triathlon about 10 years ago, and over the last 10 years, pursued triathlon to its ultimate highest level. And for the past 6 or 7 years, I've been competing at the world triathlon level, and was fortunate enough to attend the 2020 and 2024 Paralympic Games as a member of Team USA competing in triathlon. And so that kind of takes us to today. But yeah, that's me in a basic little nutshell.
You're a very young kid at that point.
I was diagnosed with cancer when I was 10 months old. So, I went through 5 6 years of pretty intense treatment, and every time the cancer seemed to go away, it came back stronger than ever, and eventually just the treatment just took its toll on my eyes, and so like my parents knew from a very early age that I was going to go blind, and they told me that, like, they didn't hide it from me, but it still, it was that, that thing where you hear, one day you can see, and then the next day I mean, granted, I couldn't see well, but the next day, yeah, I mean, I had no eyes, and it was very scary. But again, it's all about connections, and I'm not gonna pretend to say that everything went smoothly, and I had this brilliant smooth sailing life from the time I was 6 years old to now I'm, what am I, 32, 33, something along those lines. I don't even remember how old I am these days. But yeah, I've been able to take the encouragement and the connections from people that I've connected with over the years, and I've turned a passion of adventure athletics into a career, and I've been able to climb the ranks and represent the USA on the highest sporting level that there is in the world, which is pretty cool.
Absolutely. That's phenomenal. What do you think that you've learned from this experience that you can share with guests in the audience who, may go through something similar, may go through something different? Everyone has struggles and things that seem like they're going to end everything and take away all of your choices. And it can be hard to appreciate sometimes that you don't have control over the circumstances all the time, but you do have control over the way that you react to them.
At the end of the day, you have to do the best you can with what you have, even though it may seem like we don't have choices. We always have a choice. Like there always is a choice presented to us. We can always choose to stay put. And oh, woe is me. We can choose to move sideways, left or right. We can choose to move forward. We can choose to move up. We can choose to move backward. There's all kinds of, there's always a choice for us. And it's just a matter of sitting down and honestly assessing, like, what is it that I have, and what is it that I can do, and really finding and exploring your limitations, and then seeing what you can do to push those limits outward and see if you can expand your limits. And so always just setting the bar a little bit higher, a little bit further out of reach than we think is possible. So I tell people all the time, I mean, it's really just figure out what the basics are and then do those to an extremely high standard on a consistent basis. So I have this little saying that, I combined a little saying that my triathlon coach taught me with, something that my dad always told me growing up. And that was, keep it stupid simple, do simple well, and do simple better. And so that's basically what I did growing up was, I figured out, okay, like let's just do, like let's learn how to be a good little blind kid. Let's study and do well in school. Let's figure out how to do this rock climbing thing, and then let's explore beyond that, and let's push the limits a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further, and eventually you get bored with that and you move on to the next thing. And so it's always about finding your limits and then trying to push them out a little bit further.
I love that. I love that sort of focus on the simple things, like get the basics down, as well as continuously redefining and pushing yourself outside of your limits so that you can continue to get better.
A lot of the times we overcomplicate things. We tend to just overcomplicate things. It's human nature. I compete in a sport that involves swimming, biking, running. There's tons of gear involved. There's all this theory about training philosophies and all that. But at the end of the day, it comes down to who can swim, who can bike, who can run, the fastest and get to the finish line the fastest. And whatever you got to do to make that happen, it's all about just, making sure that the simple things are done really, really well. And that was something that I learned very early on, as a kid growing up, who was totally blind. I didn't have to overcomplicate things, just like in school. Like if, I learned that, hey, if I actually read my textbooks, listened to my teachers, wrote down what my teachers were saying, and I studied that, and I committed all that stuff to memory and all that, well, guess what? I would do pretty well on exams and tests and all that. So it really was just triathlon, was just a continuation of building on what I learned as a kid. Was just there's no need to overcomplicate things.
Yeah, it sounds like an incredible amount of discipline. I know that I was involved in athletics in high school and college early on, and it just takes a whole another level of discipline and dedication to really become competitive. And I mean, at the level that you're at, right, Paralympic, right? I mean, that's sort of beyond really high level college athletics, and to have sustained that level of discipline and dedication for years is pretty incredible.
It's definitely portrayed sometimes as this very glamorous life. And I always tell people, if you want to a professional Olympic or Paralympic level athlete, get ready for a life of boredom, because that's really what it is. It's a lot of the same routine every day. It's getting up at the same time every day. It's going and executing your workouts. It's having very simple, bland, kind of boring meals, and it's making sure that you're dotting all your I's and you're crossing all your T's and all that. And it's day in, day out for for weeks, months, and years. And all of that effort, it may only result in a handful of seconds, or depending on your event, it may only result in milliseconds. I think it was, I can't remember, but I think it was Usain Bolt that said, I work for years to shave off 1/100th of a second, and people expect results much quicker than that. Like it takes time. So exercising patience as as a Olympic or Paralympic level athlete is a lesson you learn very quickly. I can tell you that I am a significantly faster, stronger athlete than I was back when I competed in the Tokyo Paralympic Games, back in 2021. But everyone else is also significantly faster, stronger, fitter. And so, that doesn't, you can put in the work, but sometimes the results don't come the way you want or expect. So, um, you really you have to love, and have a passion for what you're doing. And that's regardless of whether you're in elite sport or you're competing, or you're just in an office job, or if you're wanting to be a parent or anything along those lines. You've got to really enjoy the process of getting your goal or your finish line, because if you ever reach your goal or your finish line, I would argue that you're not working hard enough, you're not pushing hard enough, or you're not setting goals that are really fulfilling. I always feel that we need to always be in the hunt, because at least to me, it's that chase, that pursuit that is so satisfying.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that the growth is how I put it for myself. Growth and learning, it ends up being more meaningful, and that process that you're talking about, than getting the thing right, the secondary momentary goal that you finally hit after months of work. You always think that that's going to be so exciting and so fulfilling, but it's fleeting, right?
Oh yes, oh yes, indeed. It is oh so fleeting.
And what you do retain is all of the skills, and the talent, and for you, the fitness that you've gained by doing the hard work for months and years leading up to that.
It's a pretty cool thing, because that it all the hard work that you put in, it doesn't leave. The hard work, the discipline, the work ethic. Yes, I'm going to continue to be a super fit, strong person, as long as I maintain it. I may eventually, when I decide to step away from elite sport, I'll definitely lose some of my fitness, but the things that don't go away are that that learning of patience, that dedication, that hard work, all of those intangibles. And it's just a matter of then applying the discipline and the intangibles you learn from sport into other areas of life. And really, I mean, really, triathlon in particular, my sport is very synonymous with life, because there's really no such thing as a perfectly executed uh, triathlon, because there's always going to be something that trips you up, or gives you grief or something. There's never any smooth sailing, and I think that's very, very true in life as well.
Yeah, I'm super curious. So you mentioned that you've gone through a ton of different adventure sports and finally landed on the triathlon. What made you decide on that sport as your go forward sport?
Oh boy, that's a story. So I graduated from college in 2013, and I was a very cocky, arrogant 21-year-old at the time. I came from a family of entrepreneurs, business people, and so I basically said, well, I'm CEO material, so I'm going to apply for every job that's CEO and above. I quickly figured out that doesn't work in the real world. So I started climbing my way down the corporate ladder, and until I, finally fell off the bottom rung, you know, hit the bottom, hit the floor, and started digging a hole. And so eventually I looked up, and I realized that, oh man, I am a year removed from college. I'm in debt. I'm 25, 30 pounds heavier than I was when I graduated college, and things are not going so good for me. And so I decided that in order to get my mind kind of back on the right track, I needed to first get my body back in shape. And so I decided to start running. And as a totally blind person, the ways I could run were either run on a treadmill, which is not the most fun thing to do, run on a hamster wheel, or I could find someone to run outside with me. And so I jumped online and did some Google searching, how does a blind person run, and found a website called United in Stride and connected with someone in my area. He responded, and I went out and did a kind of faked my way through a run with him. He didn't really know what he was doing. I didn't really know what I was doing, but we kind of figured it out together. And so we started running together on a fairly regular basis. And, eventually he told me that he was a triathlete, and, he basically told me that, running is dumb. You should do triathlon. And I was silly enough to believe him, and he basically peer pressured me into giving triathlon a go. And for some reason, I fell in love with it. I loved this idea of putting a puzzle together. I loved the process of learning how to swim, efficiently as an adult. Because I knew how not to drown, but I wouldn't say that I knew how to swim at a competent or competitive level as a 23, 24, 25-year-old, however old I was at that point. And so, and then I'd always enjoyed, tandem cycling, but had never done anything at a competitive level. And then I was, figuring out how to run and all that. So I just loved this process of putting, swimming, biking, and running together and figuring it out. And I kept entering races and, just doing triathlons, and found this community of people that was just nutso about triathlon, because it's a crazy sport, and you gotta have some screws loose to really enjoy it and get into it. And I found out that of the 97 screws in my head, about 150 of them were loose, so I fit right in. And so I loved the process of, just swimming, biking, and running, and, trying to get faster, go longer, do all the things. And I wanted to do it all, and I wanted to have it all. So that's really kind of how it happened. And it just so happened that, I was able to find my way into being really good at it.
Yeah, that's incredible. So you actually just got into it just trying to get into shape. You weren't already, at your super high athletic level. You were trying to get back in shape.
Yeah, no, I was definitely I was definitely not in shape when I decided to get into triathlon. Like I said, I was probably about 25, 30 pounds heavier than when I had graduated college. I was as far from in shape as you could be. And I think, the first time I ran a 5K or something like that, I think I did it in, 33 or 35 minutes or something like that. And, and then my first ever triathlon, I did an Olympic distance triathlon. So it was a 1,500 meter swim, a 40-kilometer bike, and a 10-kilometer run. And I think that race took me over 3.5 hours to do. And, it's crazy to think back on, that. I could probably, if I went back and did that exact same race now, I would probably go under 2 hours for that race. I have very easily gotten twice as fast over the last 10 years. And just to see the progress, now I run at the Paralympic Games in Paris, I ran just under an 18-minute 5K. And, that would have been unthinkable for me even 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago.
Wow. That's a huge difference. And I can definitely hear from your story that you pushed your limits, right? You didn't let yourself get slightly better than the 35-minute 5K. Right? You went for, like you said, double the speed, essentially.
And hey, it didn't all come in one big chunk. I mean, it took time, and I was not always patient with that, but I had to learn patience, and I had to surround myself with the right teachers and the right mentors to teach me that patience, and to show me what it really meant to be an elite athlete, a professional athlete. And just like when Eric Weinmeier, back when I had just lost my sight, and he gave me that verbal slap upside the head to not let my blindness be an obstacle. I did the same thing when it came to triathlon. I just connected with the right people, was confident enough to reach out to the community and connect with as many people as I could. And, I decided to learn and absorb all the knowledge and all the things I could. Because it's really quite amazing that, people love giving advice. And if you listen to it and you follow it, and especially if you follow the advice of, the best athletes or the best business people or something like that in the world, well, it's amazing how quickly you can improve and how you find success as well.
Yeah, I'd love to hear, if you have one or two mentors, coaches, people who have made the biggest difference in your life and in your journey.
I mean, hands down. I mean, first and foremost, I mean, my parents have been probably the biggest role models and mentors in my life. They're the ones that never held me back, always challenged me and pushed me to find my limits and to break through and not let my blindness be an excuse. But definitely. And then the guy that got me into triathlon, Mike Melton, he and I actually became such good friends. We actually became roommates for a couple of years. We lived and breathed triathlon together for a handful of years there together. And then when I started improving and getting fast enough so that Mike couldn't guide me, he introduced me to the right people and pushed and challenged me to keep going with the sport. I went out and found great coaches, and the guy who's been coaching me for the last 6 years, Derek Williamson, has probably had the biggest impact on my triathlon journey. And he much sooner than I believed in myself. I think when I moved to the Olympic and Paralympic Training Center here in Colorado Springs, back at the beginning of 2019, Derek, at the time, my personal best 5K was, just over 22 minutes. And, I got on campus and Derek said, I'm going to turn you into a 17-minute 5K guy before I'm done with you. Lo and behold, here I am now, consistently running in the 17-minute 5K range, but it took a long time to get there, and he absolutely, believed in me and pushed me to all new heights. And then, I can't, I can't not acknowledge, just the numerous people that have been my eyes on the race course and in training as well. Guys like, Zach Goodman, who I've trained and raced with for, the past 6 years. He and I have, done over 20 races together and, stood on a lot of podiums together. Guys like, Andy Potts, who guided me at the 2020 Paralympic Games, and Marty Andre, who is, trained and raced with me as well, and who guided me at the 2024 Paralympic Games. It just, I mean, I could go on and on and on, because this has really been a team effort. And, my success, the success that I've had in sport and life has largely been because I've just kept stepping in on the shoulders of taller and taller giants. I think Isaac Newton was very right, or I think it was Isaac Newton or Albert Einstein or some scientist way back in the day say, I've seen further because I've stood on the shoulders of giants. And that's so true when it comes to my success and my journey.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So what have been some of the highlights of your journey? What have been some of the biggest high points?
Man, they're I'm trying to pick out some, but at least in I'll actually rewind a little bit. I'll back up before triathlon. A couple of really big high points before I got into the sport of triathlon were, we're doing a version of the Inca Trail when I was just 14. That was my first really big major national kind of adventure. And then the very next year, when I was 15, I joined up with a group of teenagers, high school and college age kids, and we climbed and summited Mount Kilimanjaro. And then fast forwarding into my triathlon career, my first Ironman back in 2016, it was a slow grind of a day. but just the feeling of crossing the finish line after nearly 16 hours of swimming, biking, and running, it was something special and unique. But then also fast forwarding to 2018, when I actually lowered my Ironman time from almost 16 hours down to just under 11 hours. That was really cool and special, because at the time, and I was the first totally blind person to go under 11 hours for an Ironman triathlon, and just that feeling of accomplishment, knowing that I had put in the work over a 2 or 3 year span to get to that level. And then the highlights over the last 6 years of racing at the Paralympic level. Oh my God! I mean, just every time I've stood on a podium, or every time I have raced shoulder to shoulder against competitors and athletes, those are really special. But it's also witnessing my teammates accomplish their goals. Watching teammates. I had two teammates come to mind, highlights from just this past Paralympic Games in Paris. One of my good friends and teammates, Haley Dans, she had won a silver medal at the 2016 and 2020 Paralympic Games in triathlon, and she finally broke through this year and stood on top of the podium in Paris. And she had just put in so much work over the last few years, and she has been just the best in the world, in paratriathlon. And so seeing her finally stand on top of that podium was so incredible. And then also my friend and teammate, Mohamed Lana, who, immigrated from Morocco to the U.S. and became a U.S. citizen in 2017, and, was able to climb his way onto the podium in Paris, and get a silver medal as a U.S. citizen. Stories like that, and just being able to see my friends and teammates accomplish their dreams and goals. Those are bigger highlights to me than any podium or win or anything that I've been able to accomplish.
Yeah, it's I find it so fulfilling when you're able to feel like you're a part, even a very small part, in helping someone else be successful. Especially, I mean, in your case, right? You mentioned that these are people that you've known for 6+ years, people that you've trained with and worked with day in and day out.
Yeah, no, you definitely, when you spend as much time together as we do, training and traveling and all that, you get to know each other really, really well, and you get to see some really high highs, but you also get to see some pretty low lows. And we have definitely all cried together. We have definitely all suffered together through training sessions and through frustrations and all kinds of things. So it's and we here at the training center have just such a cool and unique team. Selfishness is not accepted and not tolerated on our team. We actually we say that we have 4 team values, and they're kind of tongue in cheek, because so the quick little context to this. One day, we walked onto the pool deck, and there was a whiteboard set up, and I think the para swimming team had written up this list of it was 20 or 30 values that they had for their team. And one of my teammates, I can't remember if it was Haley or Howie or someone, looked at it and was like, TLDR. And so too long, didn't read, and so we were like, hey, what if we boiled down our team values to represent TLDR? And so our team values are tough love, live, laugh, love, don't be a dick, and really try hard, just really try hard not to suck. And so those are our team values. Because tough love, we give each other a hard time. We don't pull punches with each other, but at the same time, you have to be able to laugh at yourself. You have to be able to live life to the fullest extent and laugh about it. And then like I said earlier, that selfishness part, it doesn't fly on our team. So that's where don't be a dick came came into existence, because we just don't tolerate that.
Mm.
And then then the really try hard not to suck piece was, look, as long as you're giving it everything you got, and you're not shirking your responsibilities, and you're not you're here and as long as you're here for the right reasons, we will accept you. You don't have to be the fastest, you don't have to be the best, but you've got to try, and you've got to give it your all. And we live up to those values, and so that's kind of how that's the essence of our team.
Mm. Yeah, I love that story, and it sounds like a phenomenal team. You
It
mentioned
is.
some of the lowest lows. I'd love to to hear about what some of your biggest struggles have been throughout the years and how you've gotten through them.
Oh boy. The lows can happen. They happen a lot. So one low that I can think of, in particular. So I wrestled, in college. I was a wrestler in high school, and I wrestled a little bit in college. And so at the end of my college wrestling career, I got slammed on my shoulder, and well, it turns out that I injured my shoulder pretty badly, but decided not to get it fixed. After several years of triathlon training, my shoulder was just really in a bad spot. I was in chronic pain for several years, and at the kind of halfway through 2022, I was on a roll, but that it just got to a point where it was just unbearable, and I could hardly lift my arm up over my head. And so at the beginning of 2023, I went under for surgery, and missed about half the year of the triathlon season,
Wow.
because I was rehabbing, injury, and I wasn't able to take part in a lot of training sessions, and all that. And it's hard when you're in that spot to stay motivated, and it's hard. I went to a pretty tough dark place, but was able to, again, had a superb team around me, that my teammates were always there to cheer me up, or smack me around, to make sure that I stayed on top of my physical therapy and everything. And it ultimately worked out. I have a super healthy shoulder now, and swimming, biking, and running faster than I ever have in the past. But also, I've seen some low lows of my other teammates. I had a teammate in 2021. He missed out on going to the Tokyo Paralympic Games by seconds, really. They took the top 10 guys in the world. He was ranked 11th. And to see the years that he had put in, was really hard, to see him then miss it. But then he took that and channeled it into the next 3 years, and he made it to Paris, and he had a solid race in Paris. But then also seeing miss out on the podium in Tokyo, by just a few seconds. I think less than 10 seconds. He missed the podium, and he considered retiring, because he had come fourth at, I think that was his second or third time coming fourth at the Paralympic Games in various sports. And but then he came back and won a gold medal in 2024 in Paris. So just seeing those lows, and then seeing how my teammates then took that adversity, or that pain, and turned it into triumph, was it's always been a lesson for me. So, but another, probably one of the lowest lows, though, for me personally, was at this past Paralympics, just a couple of weeks ago, at the time of this recording. My guide, who I've trained and raced with for 6 years, got really, really sick. The the day before our race, and he actually was so sick that he was not able to race. And so we had to go to my backup guide, and just to see the work that Zach had put in over the last 6 years, in particular the last 2 or 3 years that we had put in together. I mean, it tore it tore me up inside. But Zach was was able to drag himself out to the race course at least to cheer everybody on, even though he was he was not doing so good. He suffered through to make sure that he was out there cheering all of us on. And so that was a gut wrenching thing to see my teammate who has swam, biked, and ran with me so much over so many years, not get to showcase his talent and his performance there right alongside me. So that was, for me, that was probably the lowest point over the last handful of years in particular. But again, looking at the resilience of my teammates, looking at Zach's resilience, and the attitude that it's you gotta maintain as positive an attitude, and look forward to the future, learn from the past. And so it's still processing that part at least, but things will be okay in the long run.
Yeah. Well, it's been quite inspiring to get to chat with you and hear about your journey and the highs and lows and the learnings and the joys and struggles. I'd love to ask you one last question, which is, if you could go back and give your younger self any piece of advice, what would it be?
And I think we'll take it back to kind of what I said earlier, and that was keep it stupid simple, do simple well, do simple better. Don't overcomplicate it. As a kid, have fun, live an adventurous life, and don't lose that. Sometimes as adults we can get too serious. Yeah. And so if we can embrace the joy of life, just keep it stupid simple, do simple well, do simple better. And that's not just for athletic performance. That's for finding pleasure in the little things in life as well.
Absolutely. I love that. It's clearly served you. And I think that's the perfect way to cap off our interview. So thank you so much, Kyle. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you today.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jordan. Really appreciate the opportunity to come on and have a nice little chat.